Welcome to the Educating Mindfully Learncast, where we support mental health and well-being in education through mindfulness-based learning. Our Learncast is like a podcast, but with connected, reflective learning in our online community, which also has the opportunity for educators to earn professional development hours. This Learncast is a special experience for mindful educators and leaders to personally grow their practices within and beyond education as mindful global citizens. Before we begin, we invite you to pause where you are for an invitational intention. Perhaps placing your hands on your heart. And together we will take 4 collective breaths, 1 breath for each ripple within our framework's educational ecosystem. Breathing in first for ourselves, and exhale. Next, breathing in for our staff, and exhale. Then breathing in for our students, and exhale. And breathing in for society as a whole, including families and communities. And exhale. Consider pausing and committing to yourself a collective intention by saying, I am a mindful global citizen. We look forward to learning with you as we continue educating mindfully together. My name is Lindsey Frank, and on behalf of our leadership team, we thank you for being you. Welcome to our final episode of the Educating Mindfully Learncast, titled Mindful Decision Making, Aligning Your Heart During Times of Change. I am Lindsey Frank, the President and Director of Educating Mindfully, and it is an honor to guide our final episode together. This past year, we created this Learncast to support mindful educators and leaders with integrating mindfulness-based learning within and beyond the classroom. As episodes unfolded, this Learncast became more than a series of conversations. It became a space of reflection, of possibility, and a space where educators, leaders, caregivers, and changemakers could pause long enough to reconnect with what truly matters. This Learncast was able to reach more than 250 hearts at the time of this recording. Today's episode is deeply meaningful because we are exploring a topic that touches every aspect of our lives as educators and leaders, and really as humans, and that is mindful decision making. More specifically, this is how we align our hearts when making decisions during times of change. And interestingly, this topic is so beautifully aligned for our final episode. And this was all by chance how all of this aligned with each episode. Because change is exactly what this season represents for our organization as we sunset, our world as a whole, and perhaps even personally in our lives. Whether you're listening while driving to school, walking outside, preparing lessons, sitting in uncertainty, navigating your own transition, anything, however you may be today, I invite you to simply arrive here. Maybe place one hand on your heart if that feels supportive, or however you can tune inward. And perhaps mindfully decide to be here and now. Become present to this moment and think about an area in your life where you have made or maybe are in the process of making a challenging decision. Let it resonate within so you have this mindset and heart set for our episode today. And let's take a collective breath in to connect our hearts. And a collective breath out, letting it ripple with intention. And as we begin, I want to share with our mindful community about today's focus within Educating Mindfully's mindfulness-based learning framework. Our framework itself looks like an ecosystem. And if you've been following our episodes over time, you may have gotten really familiar with our ecosystem. But if this may be your first time or listening or connecting with us, and you'd like to see a visual representation of the framework, you can visit our website at educatingmindfully.org/framework. So within the framework, it really is a symbol of an ecosystem. And in the ecosystem, there are 4 trees, and those trees represent our main skill progression, our competencies. And that is guiding our practice for mindfulness-based learning. And with the trees, the third one is mindful decision making. In our mindfulness-based learning micro-credential program, which as a part of our organizational sunset is now fully free and open to all. And that has now become our self-guided program. And you can find that program and resources all on our website and our YouTube channel. But within that self-guided program, we share that mindful decision-making ensures caring and constructive choices are made with presence and intentionality. It is rooted in maintaining self-connection while making decisions that positively impact the self and the community. So essentially, mindful decision-making allows for the intention behind each choice. It increases the integrity, our integrity. It also creates alignment between our inner world and our outer actions. So ultimately, it supports decisions that hold a heart-centered benefit for all. And when we think about education, we think about leadership, or simply just being human in today's world, mindful decision-making matters more than we'll ever know. Because we're constantly making decisions. No matter how big, no matter how small, moment by moment, every decision matters. Even how we respond to stress, how we navigate conflicts, how are we supporting our students, our staff, leading communities, right? Even caring for ourselves without disconnecting from others. It's really how it is that we continue to show up and make these decisions with intention. And one final piece that, as I was reflecting on this LearnCast today, another decision is really knowing, like, how do we know when it's time to hold on and when it's time to let go, right? These are not just logistical questions. They are mindful leadership questions. So that brings us to really thinking about and reflecting on what really is mindful leadership. And there's a difference between leadership and mindful leadership, right? Mindful leadership is leadership rooted in presence. It's the ability to remain aware, grounded, reflective, compassionate, and intentional while navigating the complexity and uncertainty of change that change brings. And for those of you who know and follow my work, I really like to connect to the butterfly and how that really supports through the change process, through the complexity, through that chrysalis, through that full becoming. And so every moment of that process, we are making choices. So mindful leadership is also not about perfection or about always having the answer. And it's also because it's called mindful leadership, I also want to name that it is not about performing calmness while you're still disconnected from something. Like, it's not a pseudo identity that we have in mindful leadership. It's the intention and presence. So instead, mindful leadership asks us to stay connected to ourselves while engaging in the world around us, while there might be the chaos. It's how we can cultivate that steadiness as we make the decisions and as we take aligned actions. So it asks us to pause so that we can be proactive and responsive rather than reactive in the moments that challenge us. Especially as leaders, we are called forth in experiences where we might need to be making decisions rather quickly, but still honoring that space between, that pause between, so that we can fully show up as who we need to be in those moments, making the decisions and taking action. Mindful leadership also invites us to not just hear, but to listen. It invites us to notice our assumptions and regulate our nervous systems, and really to become aware of how our energy, our choices, and presence influences the communities that we serve. So these qualities are all embedded within our framework ecosystem, especially the trees representing, and I'm going to name these here, is the mindful self-connection, mindful self-regulation, mindful decision-making, and mindful social connection. And we've shared in other episodes as well in our self-guided program, the intentionality between each of those trees and why mindful is directly attached to all of those different skills. And within education, our embodiment of these qualities influences the entire environment. Students feel our presence before they even hear our words. Staff cultures are shaped by the emotional care of leadership or lack thereof, right? Communities also ripple outward from the way people are supported within systems, or as well as not being supported by systems. Mindful leadership also recognizes that how we lead matters just as much, and if not more, than what we lead. And I'm going to name this here too, honestly, that even within education, mindful leadership, I'm finding, is a gem and often is rare to find. And honestly, that needs to change, right? Schools are what nurture the ecosystems beyond education. And so we need to seriously be asking ourselves, what kind of ripples is our leadership having on the communities that we serve? And what this might inquire in our hearts is a reframe of how we define what a leader is, and really like how we redefine what leader, the actual word leader, means. So I invite you to pause for a moment and perhaps even pause this LearnCast episode and think or journal about the word leader. Like, what comes to mind when you hear the word leader? Are there certain people? Are there certain qualities that you think of? What about influence or titles? The impactful leaders and even the questionable leaders. Like, really thinking about, what does leader bring up for you? Just feel the energetic charge that this word has in our world today, how society might even define leader. And personally, I have had resistance to the word leader. As many leaders I have seen in our world today, in education, and even personally that I may have had. And at times it just, there was not a positive mark in my heart from certain leaders. And then over the years, when I was stepping into leadership roles, such as, for example, this, right, the president and director of Educating Mindfully, even the CEO of my own company, and shifting from the classroom, beyond the classroom, like I found myself moving a necessary action of moving beyond the language and titles of leadership into something that felt more human and more aligned, more expansive for me, and something that I could identify with because I really had resistance to the word leader. It didn't feel like a quality within me because of what I thought and how I defined what leadership was. And so for me, I've reframed leadership to be what I call heart-centered change makers. And this is because, first, one, leadership is not limited to titles, right? You do not need to be a superintendent, a principal, director, teacher leader, whomever to create impact. All of us, every day, every moment, have the ability to create lasting change. Each human being influences the communities around them because every interaction creates the ripples. I love Brene Brown's quote that a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and who has the courage to develop that potential. That's the closest leadership quote that I've been able to find that I was able to resonate with, but it's still heart-centered changemakers just really connects with me personally. So second, that heart-centered, right? That's an important, it's not just change makers, it's heart-centered change makers, because this means that this is not a top-down, this is not a bottom-up, it's not an either or, this is a center rippling outward from the heart. It's an approach, it's a model that empowers as a change maker. And this is why change makers becomes really that true word and goes beyond just leading. It cultivates the conditions for lasting ripples of change. It's not just one person, and it's not just getting us to a destination. It's really empowering all of us through the heart that we can create the change that's necessary. So when these ripples are guided by awareness, compassion, integrity, intentional decisions, especially paired with action, right? All those other pieces are great, but if there's not action attached, well, then nothing's going to happen or change. So we want to make sure that the action is there, that's aligned. But when all of those components are there as a heart-centered change maker, that's when everything becomes transformative. And so my invitation for you moving forward is to consider reframing when you're speaking about leadership, to start shifting the language to heart-centered change makers, especially in education. And I feel like some of the greatest opportunities that really test us as heart-centered change makers is how we make decisions during times of change. Because change often activates fear. There's uncertainty. There's also grief of something that we once knew is now changing. And so that's like that grief of loss. There is a control layer or feeling like you are not in control. Then we have the scarcity mindset or even attachment to things. And it's a full identity shift when we're talking about change. And so sometimes we know what needs to happen long before we even feel emotionally ready for it. And so that's where mindful decision making becomes essential, because how we make decisions influences the outcome, not just externally, but internally from the heart. And also not just in this moment, though that's when the action occurs. It's knowing where that ripple goes from that intentional, mindful decision. So the energy, awareness, and alignment behind every decision we make matters. And often the most mindful decision is not the easiest one, but it is the bravest one. And then this brings us to something important that I'd like to share with our community, right? As an organization, Educating Mindfully is entering a season of sunset and completion. And for many listening, this may be the first time hearing this announcement. So this in itself is an embodiment of mindful decision making. And so the sunset became this invitation into this decision making process. It invited ourselves, our team, and our community into deep reflection and honest conversations, along with acknowledging the changing educational landscapes, the shift in funding and participation, engagement, and also recognizing what could be sustainable and aligned and what may not be, and how can we make something sustainable moving forward, but maybe in a new way. And what I want to emphasize today, especially with mindful decisions that might be challenging, for example, our sunset is not a failure. Decisions are not a failure. Something wasn't all what this is a learning piece, but also this experience doesn't dismiss the impact of the work that has happened. And also completion is not a failure. Sometimes mindful decision making asks us to recognize when something has fulfilled its purpose in its current form. Oh. And really, when we're making these decisions and seeing where we're at in this present moment, in the current form where something may be, it honors the opportunity to hold that with integrity. And although there may be grief in a decision, there's gratitude, there's love and expansion with it too. And this is because the mission does not end here. This is why we mindfully chose to call this a sunset as an organization. This was a part of that decision-making process, because there can also be a sunrise in the future. So as an organization, we absolutely could have just said, we're dissolving, we are closing, and to not allow our resources to be available. But that was not something that we felt was within integrity of the organization. So as a mindful decision, we then were able to map the actions that felt most beneficial for the organization, honoring the path and past, and also seeing how we can continue to advocate in a different way for the future. And honestly, in many ways, this transition represents the next stage of mindfulness-based learning, because this work is now expanding through all of us, through our embodiment and our advocacy. And this is the powerful symbolism of the ecosystem. You know, I'm so grateful to have been a part of the writing process and the creation of this ecosystem, because it really guides so much. And when we can tune inward to the power of the ecosystem, it can really guide us in these moments where we have to make mindful decisions. Because no matter the storm, there could be a massive storm going on in that ecosystem, right? No matter the conditions, even if there's a forest fire, which some of us may be feeling in the world, it might seem like that, right? But the ecosystem remains present, it's resilient, and it will regrow, and it might look different. And what I also love is within our ecosystem, we have the stream, and the stream represents the movement and actions through advocacy. And it continues outward and onward into the ocean of mindful global citizens, as you see at the bottom of the framework. That's the ocean. And that's the ultimate goal. So the ecosystem itself becomes our hope and our path for this next journey. And this is why, as a team, we made the mindful decision to make all of our resources, videos, even our program, accessible and free to all so that it can guide future mindful decisions in the field of education. And that could be whether at a school-based level, it could be at a district-based level, and potentially even national and international level for education as a whole to guide our practice. And although we may not be in the form of a 501c3 organization anymore, we can still advocate and choose a new version of how we get to serve. So with all of those different pieces and the resources, I'm going to share here the website again so that you can go on at any time and continue this path through your own embodiment. All of our resources are available there, and they will continue even after the sunset. So you'll be able to find our resources at educatingmindfully.org and just see where you are guided in your path. Another piece that I want to share in this final episode is acknowledging the full ecosystem of the mindfulness-based learning framework, including the elements that may not have had their own dedicated LearnCast episode. However, those particular components that I'm going to share, they were all interwoven throughout everything that we were creating. And that included the explicit and embedded teaching practices, which was represented by one of the raindrops in the framework, the ripples of our self, staff, students, and society, the advocacy as the stream and movement and action, and mindful global citizens as the ocean. So all of these framework elements matter, in addition to all of the other ones that we had shared in our LearnCast series. So first, one of the core practices that is represented as one of the raindrops in the ecosystem are the explicit and embedded teaching practices. Explicit practices are the moments where mindfulness-based learning is intentionally taught. And this would be like explicitly teaching a breathing practice or the community circle or reflective journaling experience or a nervous system regulation strategy, content or mindfulness lesson that is directly explicitly taught. And the embedded practices are equally important. These are the subtle ways that mindfulness becomes woven into the climate and culture. It's how we transition our students. It's how we speak to one another and respond to behavior. It's how we facilitate meetings with presence and honor pauses. And it's also how belonging is cultivated. So mindfulness-based learning was never meant to be one more thing. It was meant to become a way of teaching, leading, and being. And another important part of the framework is the ripple effect. The ripples remind us that transformation moves outward. It begins with self because we cannot sustainably create environments for others that we are unwilling to cultivate within ourselves. And often in education, this part gets skipped, which is why this is also an advocacy piece, that we need to start with ourselves and the adults that are supporting children, so that this can be a sustainable model over time and that it's actually changing the climate and culture and not just something nice to do or whatever may be that intention that is not the full-hearted intention. So from ourselves, the ripples move outward into staff because the adults in the environment create the conditions for nervous system regulation, for learning, belonging, possibilities. And I always like to share love because love should never be a four-letter word in schools. We need to have schools that are connected in the space of the heart and love and kindness. From that, we then have the next ripple that expands to our students and then finally into society as a whole, which includes our families, communities, systems, and humanity itself. Every interaction ripples outward, and that is why this work matters. Also, as I mentioned earlier within the framework visual, I shared about advocacy, and that's something I've said a couple times now on this episode, because that's really what's calling us forward now, is represented as the stream, because the stream is moving forward and it's moving through the ecosystem out from the ripples, which are ourselves, staff, students, and society. It's calling all of us to make that difference and to take action. I thank you for holding space here with me, everyone. I love that the symbolism of the stream is representing our advocacy, because it's reminding us of the forward movement. Streams adapt. Streams can shift direction. They also nourish new spaces. And advocacy means that we, the ripples, continue carrying this work forward. It's not just within programs, not just within organizations, but through how we live and lead, teach, how we create systems, how we hold conversations and make mindful decisions in order to support humanity. And allowing education to be that heart of that space. And advocacy asks us, how do we continue becoming the embodiment of what we want to see in the world? And that's really important in the sunset time, because we are all called into this space to advocate and to be. And then finally, of those different components of our elements within our ecosystem, and I would say is the most important, is the framework flows and the stream flows towards the ocean. And the ocean represents the expansiveness and connectedness of becoming mindful global citizens. So this was always the larger vision. Being able to extend this work even beyond education, but knowing that each one of us is a mindful global citizen. And that key word of global is really important right now, especially in our world. Even with this, we began and we closed every LearnCast episode reminding ourselves that we are mindful global citizens. Not simply creating mindful classrooms or just guiding practices, but contributing to a more mindful, compassionate, equitable, and connected world, as our vision statements shares. We are becoming humans who understand our impact. We are people who can regulate and reflect. We can recognize our interconnectedness with each other, and that we lead with compassion and courage as changemakers. We understand that even small actions create ripples beyond what we can see. And our world is asking, actually, no, it's not just asking, it is requiring us to become mindful global citizens. And so this is my loving ask for us. And on behalf of our Educating Mindfully team and our mindful community, this loving ask is that we all become inspired to make mindful decisions and take aligned action within and beyond education. To use the framework and resources to support you. I would highly encourage you to take the self-guided program and really commit to this work and embody the heart of a mindful global citizen. And with all of this, I'd like to offer a curiosity question for you. And the question is, how does mindful decision-making connect to becoming a heart-centered change maker within your own role? No matter what that role may be, no matter how you're serving, this could be within or beyond education. What does mindful decision making do within your role? How can it support you? And take some time to journal. Maybe this is an invitation if you are guiding a team of teachers or leaders to engage in this conversation, maybe even with your own students. How does mindful decision making connect to becoming a heart-centered change maker in the role that you serve in? And I'm going to even rephrase that. It's not even just a role, it's just like a way of being. It's how you're showing up. How do the decisions that you make impact that? And maybe what's also coming up for me is just thinking about what decisions you have in your life right now that are asking you for more presence right now. Are there choices that you're needing to make that are asking for more of a mindful alignment, even in your actions? Like, what would this look like to lead from the heart while still honoring boundaries and sustainability and your own integrity? Now, those are really big questions, but it really is a call for us to really make sure that we are taking action. And it's hard to, even in when the world is asking so much of us, and when we leave work and needing to be with families or commitments that are there, it's really tricky to find those moments. And it's so easy to just become passive in the decisions that we need to make. But this is a challenge, a good challenge, a courageous challenge for us all to really embody mindful decision making. And as we move towards closing this final episode, I want to take a moment to express gratitude. Gratitude to every member, every listener, every mindful educator, leader, partner, supporter, and every person who believed and believes in this work and this vision. Thank you. Thank you for helping to cultivate spaces of mindfulness, of belonging, of compassion and reflection and humanity. Thank you for the countless ripples that you have created in classrooms and communities around the world. And while this organizational chapter is coming to completion, the impact continues. The advocacy and ripple continues. And the heart continues. I have a few invitational actions you may be interested in to continue your growth, and all of which can be found on our YouTube channel and our website at educatingmindfully.org. But perhaps an action after today is, first, our organization held our final gratitude circle, and that was recorded and it's available on our YouTube channel. And I invite you to watch that as a part of this sunset closure. Maybe an action step might be to take that open to all mindfulness-based learning self-guided program. Allow that to help you to create your next steps and actions on this path. You are not alone on this path. We are all here supporting in the ways that we can, in the communities that we can, and know that that particular program is there as a resource to help you on that path. Maybe it's exploring our resources, our learning library that's now available on YouTube, other LearnCast episodes that also have now been moved onto YouTube. Maybe it's reading the companion blog or blogs for this episode or prior episodes. And most importantly, the invitation is to share. Share these resources. Share it with as many people as you can. That is through the action, and that is how this work continues. And also, if you would like to stay connected with me personally and continue to explore how we cultivate heart-centered change in our lives and communities we serve as what I call butterfly effect catalysts for me, moving from educating mindfully into my company, which is called The Butterfly Within. So if you want to stay connected, you can find me there at www.thebutterflywithin.me. And I look forward to the opportunity to stay in touch. So let's just pause for a moment to let everything settle within. It has been an incredible honor to serve as your host throughout this LearnCast series, and especially as the president and director of Educating Mindfully these past 4 years. It's been an honor to learn together, to reflect together, and to share space. And while this chapter closes, I truly believe the work now lives within all of us. And before we officially close, I invite us to pause for one more final moment, perhaps placing your hands on your heart to fully connect our rhythms together. And taking a breath in and a breath out. I leave us with this question. What is one heart-centered action you can take to extend this mindful mission into your life? The world changes through these moments of action. Making your commitment today and taking one more breath in to bring it into the heart. And one more breath out to ripple it into the world. Thank you for being a part of this journey and continuing the ripple forward. Thank you for being you.
We hope this episode inspires you to take action as a mindful leader and educator. As we close, we invite you to pause where you are for an invitational breathing practice. Maybe placing one hand at your heart and/or one hand on your stomach. And together, we will take 4 collective breaths, integrating our learning, 1 breath for each ripple within our framework's educational ecosystem. First and foremost, breathing for ourselves. Inhale. Exhale. Next, breathing in for our staff. Inhale. Exhale. Third, breathing in for our students. Inhale. Sipping a little bit more air for our students. Exhale. And finally, breathing in for our worldwide community. Take the biggest inhale yet. Exhale. Consider pausing and committing a collective intention together by saying, we are mindful global citizens. We invite you to continue this conversation with us and our member online community. Learn more about our nonprofit's LearnCast membership and our mindfulness-based learning micro-credential program at www.educatingmindfully.org. My name is Dee DuBose, and on behalf of our leadership team, we thank you for learning with us as we collectively do our parts to make schools and Mother Earth better than we found it. Have a great day on purpose. Peace.